everyone knows Flav. He writes in a lot. He's on Twitter. He has a logo. He has his own merch. The logo is an FL, and you think it means Flav, but if you think about it, it means F Lance. And his brand is very, very
Flav.
EFL, and it's right there. And his whole everything he tweets and says on social media is essentially F Trey Lance, and that's his brand. And I think it's so he was explaining it yesterday on a Spaces on Twitter, and he was saying like, look, Mac Jones, Brock Purdy, Jimmy Garoppolo, they're really the perfect quarterback for Kyle, because Kyle just wants a Chris Paul, a point guard, to distribute the ball. He doesn't care about pushing the ball down the field at all. Arm strength is the least of his concerns. And so I chimed in. I said, Flav, who do you think drafted Trey Lance with the big arm? And he thought about it for a second. He said, I think Jed York forced Kyle to draft Trey Lance, which is like the silliest thing I've ever heard. So let's
Flav, really happen. You look how you sound. Stupid.
Yeah. What really happened is that Kyle and his dad wanted Trey because Trey can push the ball down the field. Mike coached John Elway and Steve Young. Kyle lost to Patrick Mahomes and in the Super Bowl. He understands he wants. Also, Kyle's number one favorite quarterback in the league is Kirk Cousins, who has a big arm. So I think it's interesting. You have all these, like, I don't know.
The best iteration of this offense was Matt Ryan.
Right. And it's like, the thing about Flav is he's not necessarily like a Brock Purdy guy or a Jimmy Garoppolo guy. He's just anti-Trey. His whole thing is F Lance. And he has these justifications like, well, Kyle never wanted Lance, and he doesn't, and Lance doesn't fit his offense because his arm is too strong. And he just wants a dinker and a dunker. Well, when Kyle goes next year and signs Kirk Cousins, the anti-Lance people will have to change their entire story and be like, actually, Kyle does like arm strength. In fact, and what Brock Purdy offered wasn't enough. Right. And then if Trey Lance goes off and actually plays well somewhere else, then those anti-Lance people will never, ever, ever, ever be heard from again. Right. So I think it's important to remember that Kyle actually is looking for a big arm quarterback who can get the ball down the field. And if you don't believe me, why'd he sign Sam Darnold?
Well, not only why'd he sign Sam Darnold, but Trey Lance, this is another thing about Trey that I think I'm going to break news. Trey Lance didn't ask to be drafted here.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Trey Lance did not ask to be drafted here. All right. So let's stop acting like he won some type of contest and we just have to suffer him. Like, no, there was real interest in Trey Lance. And a lot of it wasn't because of the fact that he could dink and dunk the ball. A lot of it was because he could air the ball out. I mean, Jesus Christ, over 50% of his throws, you go back and look at his college highlights, he's pushing the ball down the field. That's all. That's the, honestly, out of the mechanics, the injuries, getting on the field, I think that all sides involved can say that one of Trey Lance's biggest attributes is his downfield accuracy, being able to push the ball down the field, how beautiful of a deep ball he throws. All right. That's exactly what jumps off the film. I think that people like Flav and those of his ilk have a hard time placing blame on the person that they're vicariously living through, which is Kyle Shanahan. Right? I understand that you think Kyle is infallible. I know you love I know you love the cut of his jib. Sure. I get it. All right.
And I like his hat. I like his shoes.
I love it all. He's the misunderstood guy that everybody just has to understand.
Absolutely.
Right.
But no, not just everybody. The smartest, most astute football observers.
Yes. Oh, like you. There's a couple of people that we're not going to give no airtime that love to be on Twitter, and they're little Kyle Shanahans. Yeah. They love to talk like Kyle. They love to rub their finger in everybody's face.
Right.
Look at this video. Look at this film. Actually, you don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
And really,
what other coach has a cult following like that? Like, no one does that for Andy Reid. Everyone just knows Andy Reid's good.
You know what? There are a bunch of mean girls. There are a bunch of mean girls.
Yes.
Right?
Gatekeepers. You just don't understand. Yes. You don't have the playbook. You haven't grinded the film long enough.
Really, what these guys are is they're curmudgeons. Yes. And they don't bring the room together, and dampen the argument. They bring the conversation to its lowest vibration possible.
Yes.
And as you can see, even my attitude now, like, I refuse to let that type of conversation bring me down. Like, that's not where this organization is. There's tons of great people that love the 49ers who would love to have a conversation much higher than that. And I don't think that Kyle Shanahan, I think that a lot of Kyle Shanahan's backers would really assess their association with him if they understood that he doesn't care about them at all. He does not know you. All right. He doesn't know your name. No. Right. If you were in the same room with him, he'd walk right past you. Okay.
Oh my God.
So
if you walked up to him and said, Kyle, I really like your work, he'd be like, dude, I don't know you.
Check yourself.
Yeah, I don't know you. Please don't talk to me.
Check yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that's all I got for that.
I like that. Is Trey Lance the bust or the front office? They blew the window, says William Bonnet.
It's the well, we're just going to use logic here, right? Because we're not going to talk about Brock sucking or Trey sucking. I'm tired of that. Mm-hmm. Brock has played enough to show us that he could be ready right away, and he has enough development under him to operate this offense. And Trey hasn't played enough to show us what he is. So, and that's on the front office.
Yeah. All right. NG49 says Jimmy had multiple season-ending injuries through 8 times the NFC Championship game. Wouldn't answer the phone in the offseason. Trey plays 4 games. He ain't good. Yep.
Hello.
Jimmy Garoppolo threw 5 picks in 1 practice consecutively.
Yeah.
Okay. And if Trey Lance threw 2 picks in practice consecutively, people like Flav would talk about it every day on social media. But what's our
next topic? Because I don't want to bleed into
our next topic is Kirk.
All right, so let's talk about this before we go to Kirk.
All right.
This is another thing about those who say that the 49ers have seen enough of Trey in practice to know that he's not ready to be played during games. If Trey Lance has a running package where he runs the ball 16 times a game, and that's the majority of what he does, then how are they assessing that in practice if quarterbacks can't get hit in practice? Like, how are we genuinely sitting here looking at Trey Lance's runs? His design runs have you, not even the scrambles, but his design runs is what reads are he supposed to take and how he's supposed to get things done. And those aren't even real reps in practice. Mm-hmm. They're not even real reps.
They're not. It's a good point. I mean, talk about the experience as a passer. What about experience as a runner? You got to actually get a feel for that, and you can't do that in practice. That's a good point.